Hello and welcome to today's pet pairing. It is Saturday, so it is very crowded here. There's Nikola and there's two very sleepy cats right there. So let's do our makeup together and hope that everyone will cooperate. I'm going to grab my strobe cream from MAC because why wouldn't I switch it up a little bit? It's still a gorgeous product. Do I love it as much as my Ori Glow Lust? No, but I still really enjoy it. So let's apply a little bit of that as a bit of a base underneath my eyes and basically as a little illuminating product underneath foundation. Let me zoom you in a little bit so that you can see what I'm doing a little bit better. So guys, in other news, relatively big news, I have decided not to purchase the new kit that Mother released yesterday, the something with a V3. I don't even know how it's called. It came out of nowhere. It looked very appealing when I first saw it because it comes with one of those like single eyeshadows from Pat, which looks to be in her baked formula, and it's a triochrome shade. It seems to have a like magenta purple. In some photos it even seems a little bit burgundy. I'm grabbing my Clarins concealer now, by the way, that I have depotted here. Magenta purple, almost like burgundy base, and a gorgeous turquoise blue duochrome to it, which very much reminds me of the seafoam blue-green shade that is in Nocturnal Nirvana, which I don't remember the name of, but it is one of my favorite shades, and especially in that quad it's definitely one of my favorites. And all the way up until the release I was almost sure that I will get the kit, even though it was clear that it once again is going to contain one of her extreme black pencils and another one of those stupid eyeglosses. But what I didn't realize is that the kit is also going to contain the Mehron, I don't know how it's pronounced, mixing medium. And that was really like the tipping point for me, because if I buy a kit and I'm going to use one out of the 4 products in there, and I'm going to pay over 50 euros for the whole thing, and no matter how beautiful that eyeshadow is, and no matter how loyal I am to Pat and her brand, I just cannot justify spending that much money on a bundle that I would only use 25% of. So unfortunately, as of now, I have not purchased anything. It's just, you know, pushing it a tad too far for me. I'm taking my Estee Lauder Double Wear Nude Foundation now, by the way. Just something lightweight because it's Saturday and I'm not really doing anything fancy schmancy. I'm just going to be at home. I've mentioned this before, but the black pencil that came with the Dark Star kit from last year, the one that came with the pretty blue violet shade, that one just stands here in my drawer to never be used. I tried to sell it. So far there haven't been any takers, unfortunately. So I still have this eyegloss in my possession a year later. I haven't used it once, nor do I plan on using it ever. The black gel pencil I also still have. It's practically brand new because I've used it twice, because I just use black pencil very rarely. And then the that mixing medium looks great. If you don't have a mixing medium, it would be a great addition to your collection and something to, you know, that's very useful to own. But as it is, I have my trusty Inglot Duraline. I've had it for years. I've actually gone through one of those, like a full bottle of that, and I have an almost brand new bottle in my collection currently, and I don't use Duraline as often as I used to, so I absolutely do not need to have 2 mixing media, which is why I decided against purchasing that kit for the time being. And I'm just going to wait until she announces what kind of awesome, you know, release she's going to have for the spring or the summer. You know, I'll just be patient and save my money for something that I will actually have more practical use out of. Ja!
Mama, niet mee.
Nee, mama gaat niet mee. Zeg doei doei.
Doei doei.
Ik ga met Olivia spelen.
Ik wil niet naar spelen.
Ja. Okay, schatje. The toddler has left the premises. The cats are still here though. I'm taking my Dior Backstage powder now, by the way. And where was I? Yes, so I've decided not to purchase that kit. I'm only going to give one disclaimer, and that is if Alicia makes a video and she sells me on that trichrome eyeshadow, I might be weak and purchase it, especially in a moment where I feel like I haven't purchased any fun makeup in a while and I would really like to scratch that itch. Or, you know, if that kit goes on sale, which it inevitably will because a lot of Pat's things go on sale eventually. I'm curious whether some of you have purchased the kit, and I am looking forward to your opinions on it and sharing your experiences. Next, I'm going to grab my new bronzer from Hourglass in the shade Diffused Bronze Light. What are you hoping for Pat to release for spring summer? I am really keeping my fingers crossed for bronzers because she's due bronzers, and she already gave us blushes last year, so I think that it's a very logical step for her to release bronzers, especially for the spring and summer, but we shall see. Of course, I always hope for a new Mothership palette or a new quad with interesting eyeshadows in it. What else? I'm kind of done with the highlighters. We can like put a break on the highlighters for a bit because I feel like she's released so many highlighters in the past year that we have Pat McGrath highlighter to last us for the next 3 decades or something. So I would not be on board for highlighter. Bronzer, yes. More blushes, yes, if they're in like fun shades, although I really need to reel down on the blushes. For blush today, I'm going to take my Lisa Eldridge cream blush in the shade, well, liquid cream blush in the shade Dante's Dream. I'm just going to squeeze a tiny... Speaking of discontinued products, these blushes, like, they just vanished off the face of the earth. I feel like a lot of people were having issues with the packaging breaking, and speaking of the packaging breaking, this literally just happened. Okay, so now I know why these have been discontinued, because the packaging is extremely suboptimal and I am going to have to depot this now, unfortunately. Okay, well, speaking of discontinued products that I hope will make a return in more appropriate packaging than this one. It's a shame though, because the blush is actually really lovely. And I know people were quite sad that these blushes have been MIA. And I hope Lisa is planning on bringing them back. For highlighter, I'm going to take this NARS highlighter palette, which contains some of their bestseller shades. The one in the middle, I think, is the one that's the most popular. That's the shade Fort de France. I don't really know the names of these other ones, but I'm just going to make a mix of this more pinky one and the shade Fort de France, which is more like a classic champagne gold. I really love the formula on these because it is very smooth and very forgiving in terms of texture. Okay, so I'm not a very patient person, so I went off camera for a little bit to depot that Lisa Eldridge blush, and I deposited it in here. The packaging made a huge mess because it squirted blush out of everywhere. I'm sure I didn't get 100% out of the product, but this pot is full, and knowing myself, the chances of me reaching for this blush now that it's in this pot are significantly lower than they were even before, when, you know, due to the overwhelming amount of blushes I had in my collection, I already, you know, had a hard time reaching for this blush more than once every few weeks. We shall see. Also, I'm not quite sure what will happen to the formula now that it's in here, because I have to say the part that was on the top of the tub was a little bit more dried out than what came off the bottom, so I kind of like mixed everything to create this like more moussey texture. But I'm not sure, like, this closes pretty well, so I'm hoping that it will stay good for a while, but it's just, it's such a bummer, because I haven't owned this blush for a whole year, and it was relatively expensive, and I'm really disappointed. So yeah, I understand why she discontinued them. So now let's move into the eye look. The first palette I'm going to go into is my beautiful Divine Rose 2 palette, and I'm going to go into this shade. It's a really lovely, sort of like a burnt peach matte shade, and I'm going to use that as my transition to start the look off with. So I'm just going to take a fluffy brush and apply this shade all over my crease and a bit above. The next shade I'm going to grab is from the Voyeuristic Vixen quad, and I'm going to grab this sort of like brown deep burgundy matte shade and apply that into my outer corner. Another super beautiful shade. I really like the undertone of this shade because it's not too red, it's not too purple. It's just such a perfect balance of oxblood red and brown. Next I'm going to take my NYX glitter glue. You may just use your Intensify stick from Pat McGrath if you have that. I just kind of like to switch it up, especially because the NYX glitter glue is something relatively new to me and I enjoy testing it out. And so far I've had a really good experience with it. The next shade I'm going to grab from Divine Rose 2 palette is one of my favorites. It's this gorgeous orangey bronze shade over here, and that's going to go all over my lids. I just love this shade so much. The next thing I'm going to do is go back into the Voyeuristic Vixen quad and take this beautiful textured shade called Rosefire Nectar, and I'm going to just take a few flakes like this on my finger, and then I'm going to apply that over top of the shade from Divine Rose 2, and I think they're just going to look so unbelievably gorgeous layered together. In my inner corner I'm going to apply another one of my favorite shades in this palette, and that is the beautiful gold shade, and I'm going to try to apply this more subtly just as an inner corner highlight. But it's again one of those very high shine metallic shades, so it's definitely going to attract a lot of attention there. If you feel like this shade is too dark for your inner corners, I would highly recommend to take the Astral, because the Astral would look with this look in the inner corner. It's just that I really like the gold shade and I look for opportunities to use it. It just looks really pretty together with that orange and Rosefire Nectar, so I'm going to go for that. But if you feel like the gold is too dark, just use the Astral. Now to complete the look I'm actually going to take Intensifies now, because I've discovered this really interesting new trick where I apply this stick on my lower lashes, and then the eyeshadows that I apply on my lower lash line don't tend to smudge as much around my outer corners as they normally would. So now that I have discovered this little trick, I think I'm going to be using Intensifies for that very often, because Intensifies has that very convenient shape to stick in your lower lash line. And the shade that I want to apply there is this one from the Divine Rose 2 palette. It is the shade Divine Dusk. It's a shade that I don't use very often, but I actually really like it. It's just a tad too dark to use on my lashes often, and I kind of like tend to forget about it because I always get distracted by the orange and the gold and the Astral and Eleganza and the Triochrome when I open this palette. But in fact, Divine Dusk is a beautiful shade. This is a very me look. Oranges, golds, a red lipstick. Classic Mariam. I really love that extra something that Rosefire Nectar added to the orange shade from the Divine Rose 2 palette. That shade from the Divine Rose 2 palette was already one of my absolute favorite shades, not only in this palette but overall in the Pat McGrath eyeshadow lineup. But together with Rosefire Nectar, it just looks so pretty. I don't know whether you can see it right now, but when I shift into the light, because Rosefire Nectar has a little bit of like that golden lime green duochrome to it, it just makes that orange from the Divine Rose 2 palette so much more interesting. Anyway, on my lips I have Fever Dream, which is one of the matte trans lipsticks from Pat McGrath. And that is pretty much everything for this look. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm sorry I wasn't being too chatty, but I had a lot of distractions. I had to stop filming quite a few times, and I'm gonna be honest with you, that Lisa Eldridge blush exploding on me was a real shocker, and I'm still getting over the disappointment. But don't forget to let me know what you thought about this look, and I will see you very soon. Bye!